Welcome to the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. You are now part of a small underground movement of dent technicians from all over the world. We are on a mission to change our industry with innovation, intelligence, and skill. But because we don't rely on an insurance company to steer customers our way, we need to do things different. We need to do things smarter. We do that through a network of technicians that we call the Tactical Tech Movement. Now let's get this revolution started.
Hey, what's up, everybody? John Hiley here and Angela Hiley here with the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast.
Hey.
You know, we were sitting here thinking about what we were going to talk about on the podcast, and I was thinking that I still haven't done part 2 on the website podcast. However, I have no fucking clue where I left off. So I actually have to go back and kind of listen to that fucking thing to understand where I left off.
Yes, you do.
This way I'm not going to be like super redundant. So
Yep.
we will come through on that eventually.
No, the reason why I'm laughing is because, like, last summer, John and I went to an Aaron Lewis concert.
And you really got to bring this up.
Yes, and I don't know if I've, like, told this story or not, but we get our picture taken with him, and John will not, like, really let me post it. I think I stuck it on Instagram on like my Insta stories or something of that nature.
Babe, they got me at a bad angle.
But John, we got this photo taken with Aaron Lewis, and John's like, "You are not allowed to post that on Facebook or anything." And he's like, "Oh, I'll just go ahead and like crop me out of here, and it can just be a picture of you." And
I look like a fat old lady or something in that picture.
Look like you don't look like a old lady. But here's the thing that you usually do not give a shit whatsoever.
Something about that picture.
I was pretty thrown back that I think I look pretty good in the photo.
Hey, but now here's the exact opposite of this, okay? She literally can come to me and be like, "Honey, let's take a photo." Yeah. And then she holds the camera out, we take it, and she's like, "Oh my God, my chin looks super fat from that angle." And then she goes, "Well, let's stand over here. We'll have better lighting." And like literally, we'll travel around our fucking house taking photos to not even get one.
Because I don't want to use a filter. Everybody's all down with like using filters and stuff. I mean, I'll be guilty. I'm guilty. I've used them in the past, but I haven't used them for like a long time now. So I'm like, let's find the best lighting and take a good photo of ourselves.
Well, you know, it's so funny because back in the day, people would be like, "Oh, she wears a lot of makeup." And nowadays, it's like, man, that bitch be using some filters.
No, you know what? Listen, applying makeup to your face now has gotten very difficult because they come out with like all this contouring and stuff like that and adding layers, and it's crazy. Some of these women, the way they look, like you take a before and after, the amount of makeup they put on, and they look like a totally different person.
I think it's crazy how like sometimes like really big girls can take certain headshots at certain angles and make them look like they're a totally different person.
You mean they're not as big?
Right. That is fucking false advertisement in every way possible.
Yeah, I mean, like, we all have our good angles because you can take, like, John, when we got that photo taken with Aaron Lewis. You were
God.
But you're never self-conscious or, like,
right?
anything. You usually, like, don't give two shits, but for some reason about that photo, you're like...
It's the worst photo I've ever taken in my life. I might as well have had, like, a damn...
I don't see... You don't look...
I look like... I have like, a... It's horrible. It's bad.
I don't know. Maybe we should post this in the tactical group and see what people say about it.
No, I don't think we should.
I don't think it's that. I think it's just because Aaron Lewis is he's a little
Well, she knows
guy.
that I've got a secret library of photos that she does not want me to post anywhere.
Which ones?
Oh, I got some.
Are they just like bad angles or something?
I got
like
ones
that
you told me that I was not allowed to post anywhere. And I've got my little vault of them.
That's kind of messed up.
I'm just waiting for her to pull the trigger so that way I can pull the trigger.
That's messed up, John Hiley.
Listen to that.
I want to see these photos. Which ones were they?
I got them hidden somewhere.
They just probably were ones when I was like in bad lighting or like at bad angle where it made me look chubbier than.
You be quiet. There was one time I created a video and you started crying because of the blog video I put together because I captured you at some angle where you had a double chin.
Oh, nobody wants a double chin. Nobody wants a double chin. I guess it's funny when this stuff happens to you. It's just not funny when it happens. Because, like,
Exactly.
you are so photogenic, it's, like, not even fair. Like, John normally takes the best photos. He can stand, like, in pretty much any angle and just flex his muscles or his pecs a little bit. And the photo is, like...
You know what it is? It's that dipshit that Waspy has taken photos
But with
over there.
me, it's like, no.
Yeah.
No. I'm the one that, like...
No, what it is, it's fucking Waspy hired some guy. You guys know Waspy if you listen to my other podcast. Hired some guy who literally was trying to sell me credit card processing a couple years ago as his photographer at the events.
Yeah.
And this dude, you ought to see this guy's photos. This dude takes, I don't know what kind of camera he's using, what he's doing, but this motherfucker takes the worst group of photos I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Period. And he's the one taking pictures of all the, you know, all the stars and that come there, all the country singers and, you know, just like Aaron Lewis and all them.
Yeah.
I got a picture with Aaron Lewis, but it was with my cell phone.
I know, and that photo turned out awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, it did.
Aaron Lewis is kind of a quiet dude.
Mm.
Kind of quiet. We heard some interesting stuff about him, but we won't repeat it on the podcast.
Who knows?
We don't know. It came from secondhand knowledge.
You
We
just
both
never-
we were both looking at each other like, should we say it? But no, we shouldn't say it.
We probably have said it before.
We have had a few drinks on this podcast before.
Yeah, I think that's probably what had happened.
Right. So anyhow, guys, welcome if you're a first-time listener. Welcome to the Tactical Dent Tech podcast. If you're a repeat listener, you know what's up. And above and beyond that, I think probably in the next couple weeks, we're going to find something that we're going to be giving away for the review contest.
Yeah, yes.
I'm not sure that it's going to happen directly at the end of the month because of all the shit that we've got, but we will tally them up for the end of the month. So you got a little while, a couple weeks to leave a review for the podcast. Now, if we haven't helped you at all, don't fucking leave a review.
No.
But if we have, go on to iTunes and you will be entered into a contest where we're going to be doing a giveaway.
Yep, and write one all about me.
And we might have something very interesting for you. And it might start with, it actually might have a GG in its,
The light bulb went off.
you know, that we're going to be dropping the Gorilla Grip here pretty soon.
Yeah.
So, which is basically, if you guys haven't seen the Gorilla Group head on, or the Gorilla Grip,
The Gorilla
the
Grip.
Gorilla Grip, and that was a group effort that we actually named that on the Tactical Dent Tech group.
Yep.
So everybody voted the Gorilla Grip, and it's spelled a little bit different, kind of spelled like guerrilla warfare with a U.
Mm-hmm.
That is the replacement of them piece of shit handles that go on the end of tools that have the little round knob on the end.
Yep.
That you literally can just unscrew the little screw on the top and they pop off. This right here will snap onto all of them.
Do you want?
So,
But the pre-sale thing, you're going to be launching the pre-sale thing here pretty soon.
yeah, we should have the pre-sale together by this weekend. I know a lot of you guys have been hitting me up. A lot of the people who bought the hammers was hoping that a pre-sale would be, you know, with the hammer as well. But I wanted to get a little closer to the drop date before we ran a pre-sale.
Yep.
Just because I know how, and it might not be all of y'all, but some motherfuckers out there, it doesn't matter. You tell them it's a pre-sale and this kind of stuff, and they will literally be hitting you up every day wondering when that tool. Some people get so excited, and I get it. I don't do it, but I get it. Some people get so excited about a tool, man. They just, next thing you know, we'll be flooded with a message every day. Hey, John, you know, I know I talked to you yesterday, but you think that tool's going to ship out tomorrow? Like, the pre-sale was for 2 weeks, my friend. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's what you told me yesterday.
It's all about patience. That's the thing.
You have to be a little bit patient, and it really helps us gauge, honestly, like how many of them, because I know they're going to be manufacturing them within the next, 7 days
Yeah.
to 10 days. So when we do a pre-sale, we get an idea of, we can call them up, be like, hey, run an extra 100 of them, run an extra 50 of them, whatever we have to do, we can do it during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be cool. And I truly think, and actually I know that these handles are going to sell. Like I said, we've had a lot of little tool drops and stuff like that. And I have not had as many people contact me privately or hit me up on Facebook post or hit me up on Instagram about something I think this tool really has a high demand.
Well, I know that we didn't really know exactly what we were going to talk about on this podcast, but I have this quote in my phone, or this little thing, and I'm going to read it, and then I want you to tell me how you feel.
All right.
I want you to, because, I honestly feel that like we all have our highs and our lows, and sometimes we don't understand why we are going through this low. But this quote, like, I found it on Instagram and absolutely love it. So it says, God wrecks your plans when he sees your plans are about to wreck you.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I totally get that because I've always been somebody who surrendered to whatever happened to me. Whatever happens to me, at some point, at some point, I surrender and say, this is the new path.
Mm-hmm.
This was whatever should have happened,
Mm-hmm.
because I have a deep-seated belief that I've put and I've kind of ingrained inside of my consciousness that everything that happens to me is for my good, regardless if it's bad today.
Mm-hmm.
And truly, you can always, I mean, anything that happens, you can consider, there's two things. I mean, it can totally wreck your life, and you can let it overcome and overtake your life. And I'll give you an example. We actually had an issue a long time ago, and I think this is what really changed me. We had a broker a long time ago take us out of a lot of money. And back then, I know it doesn't seem like a ton of money now. I mean, it's still a large sum of money.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like $15,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like close to $15,000. But at the time, it was a lot of money to us because it was my first year on the Hale Trail. And we were hitting some really bad storms. So I wasn't really making a ton of money at the time.
Yeah.
But we were making enough to pay for our hotel. We were making enough to, go out to eat. We were making a decent living on the road, but we weren't making the type of living that I could make off of hail damage today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I was inexperienced, was coming off of, was working for car dealerships and ended up going into a body shop for this broker. And the body shop owner ended up liking me the best out of everybody that came there. And he really seen the way that I progressed, because I think we were there for at least, 6 months maybe? It might have been a little bit longer than 6 months.
I know it was like throughout this, because there for a while you were driving back and forth. Do you remember that? And then we
Right.
went up there.
Right, driving
then-
back and forth to Indianapolis.
Yeah, and then we stayed up there, and I know it was like,
And that was 2006 when I did my first hailstorm.
so it was like summer and fall.
Or the first time that I traveled for a hailstorm was 2006.
Yeah.
And, I had been basically servicing car dealers at the time. I really never worked around a lot of dent guys. So my version of how good my work was it was my version. I didn't have really a lot of people to compare with. I didn't have I didn't really have anybody to compare with. So when I got there, I definitely was not retail quality. But within probably 2-3 weeks, a month later, my quality really, came along through that time.
You were like
And
a
through
sponge.
and through the time that I was actually at the storm, my quality became phenomenal. And I mean, there was one time, I'll give you guys a little story here. And I know I'm going a little deep into the story of Indianapolis, but there was one dent that I couldn't fix that literally in front of the whole body shop. And it's not that I couldn't fix it, because I eventually fixed it, but I had such a hard time fixing this rail dent. I mean, it was like a cannonball hit the edge of this rail that I worked on it for 2 days, 2 solid days to fix one dent inside a body shop to body shop quality. I mean, that's the type of drive that I eventually got. And I mean, you had to have these things looking mint, man. We were in a very, very high-line body shop. The owner of the body shop was literally the manager at a Ferrari dealership or something like that, or the body shop manager at a Ferrari dealership all the way up until like the 80s. And then he opened up his own body shop where he had this stellar reputation. And we're still actually friends today, and really good guy. But above and beyond that, we ended up coming home. And like I said, I wasn't making a ton of money. It was a really bad storm. And we came home and we had money that we were owed. We had a little bit of money in the bank, and it was enough to, get us through the winter until the next year came around. But the guy never paid us. He kept saying that there was going to be checks in the mail. And we, at the time, we were younger, And I really let it bother me that this guy had taken us out of this much money, all the way to the point to where we started kind of all of our problems revolved around him at that time. It seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I've told this story before in some of the podcasts. We were literally in the line at the grocery store when our card got declined because he sent us a bad check, and we actually put it in our bank and didn't realize that it was a bad check until later on when we're trying to check out at a grocery store and our debit card won't go through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So long story short, one day we just kept harping on the bad thing that had happened to us, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember correctly, the one day that I ended up, we woke up, and I just remember the day being something special about the day. We lived out in a farm at the time, and the farm was just beautiful on certain days. I mean, when you woke up, just having them fields of green grass around you.
We lived on an old dairy farm.
Yeah, it was an old dairy farm that we lived at. It was like a ranch house. That it had been rebuilt. I guess the original house had burnt down there, and they built like a ranch style house there.
Yeah.
So it was just one day, and we woke up and just kind of, I just realized, I'm like, man, we can't live like this anymore. And I told her, I'm like, we should not even, this guy's name, I don't even want to hear his name. I never want to hear it brought up in our household. And that's really the day that everything began to change.
Yeah.
And it was the day that we got over that wrong that was done to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when all of a sudden Columbus, Ohio gets hit with a hailstorm.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there, and I want to tell you guys, it was such a strange thing because back then, I just really didn't have the confidence that I do today. And when I went there, I ended up hooking up with some guy, and we were on this deal, and lo and behold, a couple weeks later, everything kind of falls apart. And I'm out there again looking for work, and it's already 2 weeks into a storm. And I just remember sitting in a parking lot one day, and I'm like, man, I'm not giving up. I am not giving up on this, And it took a lot for me to, at that time, I wasn't too comfortable with sales. Like I said, I was younger. I wasn't as confident in my ability. I wasn't that comfortable with it at the time.
Yeah, because we were probably in our mid-20s.
It took a lot for me just to walk in and try to sell my service to somebody. I know that might sound odd to some people, but it really did. It took a lot for me to get to get through with that, and actually do that. But I remember I went through the phone book, and I started with the first body shop, like A, right? So I found a phone book, and I started with A, and I actually ended up walking into a body shop. I think it was called AAA Automotive.
Yeah.
And that's where I met. And I'm going to tell you guys, I drove up to this body shop, looked like an absolute shithole.
Mm-hmm.
It was a giant building and looked like a shithole when I pulled up. I mean, the whole parking lot was gravel. There was a lot of old cars, out there. However, I walked in there and I'm like, wow, this place is actually kind of big, right? And all of a sudden, this guy comes up, walking up to me, and he kind of looks like Richard Simmons. And he's got curly hair, and he's a short guy, and his name's Ronnie Collins.
Yeah.
And he walks up to me, goes, and I'm like, hey.
Oh, shit.
Can you?
It's Jonathan.
Can you avoid the phone call now? Text him. So anyhow, I end up walking up, and so I end up walking into the body shop, and Ronnie Collins is there. She actually stepped out to talk to him. But so Ronnie Collins, meet this guy named Ronnie Collins. He goes, I tell him, that I'm here to do the paintless dent removal and this and that, and give him my business card and kind of, give him the whole spiel and all this. And he grabs me by my arm and ends up putting his arm around me, and he looks at everybody and goes, the dent guy's here. And he had all these employees there, and what I quickly noticed is that he had all these Krispy Kreme vehicles in there. Well, the dude ended up being a heck of a good guy and probably a heck of a good salesman as well, because he actually had the Krispy Kreme account for Columbus, which basically meant that he knew.
Are delicious.
Yeah, which basically meant that he knew all their employees. We actually got to work on the Krispy Kreme vehicles. He had a body shop back in the corner where he had one body man, and the rest of it was a bunch of mechanics that he had in there working on Krispy Kreme trucks. Mm-hmm. Well, he ends up taking me to the office, and you got to think this guy's the nicest guy on planet Earth, probably real easygoing. His wife is the exact opposite. So we walk into this little office, in the middle of the building, in the middle of this shop, and it's probably his shop is 20,000 square feet, just full of all kinds of shit. Mm-hmm. So he actually pulls me into the shop, and he tells his wife, he goes, hey, the dent guy's here. She looks up and doesn't say one word to me. She goes, do you have insurance? And I'm like, yeah. And then she just kind of shakes her head, looks down at the paperwork, and starts writing again. I'm like, okay. So we walk out, right? And next thing you know, the guy had a backlog of people that were wanting to get their hail damage cars in. They just didn't have a dent guy that showed up, right?
Yeah.
Ended up being so busy at that place, I had to call all kinds of people to come and help me out. And the guy basically told me, like, I was pretty sketchy about letting people owe me money at the time.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I just came out of that deal with the broker, and I was real sketchy. And I looked at Ronnie and I said, well, hey, man, I don't mind working for you, but you need to pay me after we do the cars. And he said, buddy, we make big money here. He said, when you're done with the car, he basically wrote me a check to me, and I was able to drive down to his bank and cash it.
Yeah.
And that was when we got over the wrong that we had done to us, right?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying to you guys right now, if you guys have something in your life, like something that's holding you back, there's two ways you can look at it. You can continue to let it hold you back, or you can continue to let it hinder your growth.
Yeah, there's
Or-
also, like what you're saying, there's like a quote that I seen today on Instagram. It says, you'll never experience the strength if you're always skipping the struggle.
That's the truth, though. That's the truth. But that stuff just has a way of weighing on you.
Yes, it does.
You start blaming the moment. Here's what it all breaks down to, okay? The moment that you blame somebody else for your problems, you lose the power to correct them, because if it's outside of yourself, then how can you correct it? Right? So the moment I say that all the problems I have in life have to do with this one guy or gal, or even if you're somebody who doesn't get along with your wife, all my problems have to do with her, right? But the moment that you put your problems on somebody else, you pretty much strip yourself of the personal power to correct them. That's like a lot of people, I've heard people say, man, I don't know, my wife's like this and that, and I don't think we're going to get along, or, I can't get along with my girlfriend. I look at them and I'm like, man, you know what, dude, the first thing you need to probably stop doing is like trying to change them or worry about what's happening there, because you should be working on yourself, because everybody loves a good product, and the more that you work on yourself, the better you become to other people, right? So it's never about the moment. Anytime you try to change somebody out or change something outside of yourself, you're working on the wrong problem. It should start from within. You should begin working on yourself. So if you have a problem in your relationship, maybe you need to look deep within. All right. And just start focusing and working on becoming a better you. And because of that, you become a better product. And because of that, you become something that hopefully is more lovable to the person you're having so much problems with.
That's true.
Right? So, but I don't even remember what the quote was that we started with. But
Oh, I'll reread it.
but that's
Let me find it. It won't take me that long at all.
but the truth is, yeah, you're right about the struggle thing as well. I mean, there is power in struggle, and there are tests that we should go through. These tests make us stronger. They test our ability to become much more resilient, and I can actually look back at some people, and I think we had a podcast about this, where I have talked to some people that have, in a sense, you would think they may have had it really easy getting into this industry.
Yeah.
And today they have a extremely hard time learning how to advertise and grow their business, right? Because maybe they were employed by a company and everything at the beginning came to them very easily. But down the road, when they leave that company and they've got to take care of everything from, paying their own taxes to advertising, themselves, potentially building a website, potentially, growing in the retail end of the field. They have issues with that because they never developed the strength from the beginning that it took to get the business. They were leveraging off another company.
Yeah, like I'm not knocking or like saying, I don't know. I just think like it's a big difference when you're working for someone compared to if you're working for yourself.
It is.
There's a huge difference. There's so much more. I think there's like so much more responsibility
Well,
when
sure.
you're working for yourself compared to working for someone else.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing: when you're working for somebody else and you leave them, you essentially, the good thing is you've got the skills developed to actually do the job, but you haven't developed the skills to actually get the work. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I am actually happy that I had to go through the struggle of not only developing a skill at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but also getting the repair work. I mean, because today, the resilience that I built during that time serves me today. It turns me into a marketing powerhouse, and it enables me to, no matter what happens, I know that I'm going to come out the other end looking good because it's more about troubleshooting and being able to be creative and being able to, basically take something that's nothing and turn it into something.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, because of what I've been through and what we've developed over the years, we went through several phases. We went through the wholesale phase. We went through the mobile retail, and then we've opened up a shop. We went through the hail chasing. Because of being involved in just about every facet of the industry, there's really nothing that scares me at all when it comes to this business model.
Mm-hmm.
When you've been through it all, you kind of know exactly how to continue to move forward regardless of what gets thrown at you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the struggle comes in, right?
Yeah. But again, with that quote, it's God wrecks your plans when he sees your plans are about to wreck you.
And that's the truth for a lot of us, We get on a path where we think that we're on a good path, and all in all, we're not,
Mm-hmm.
And there is times when things will come about. And when things come about, I mean, it's really
Sometimes when
it gives
when
you direction.
Yeah, sometimes when like certain things happen, you're kind of like, why is this happening? But I think that's also like a really good time to kind of like self-reflect.
I think that happens with certain friends as well.
Absolutely.
So there's a certain level where, and see, she has the problem of getting a little bit too attached to people. I really
have
don't.
a big heart, okay?
Yeah.
I have a big, caring, sweet heart. That's my
and that's the
my
thing.
problem.
Right. And that's the thing for me. Like I'm kind of like live and let go. Like
Yeah.
I honestly, it doesn't matter if I know you today and you're around me today and you're not there tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just something that I guess during the time when I was growing up that I went through so many different friends and so many different groups of people that I actually hung out with that I just don't really get super attached to any specific outcome with anybody.
Yeah.
I've learned to just become much more self-reliant and I just kind of let go. At most times I think we hold on to something that's not there and I let go.
We're holding on to something that we think that we need to be holding on to, but in all reality, like you kind of like there's a silver lining in a way. It's like when you actually let go, it actually makes, I don't know how to like word this.
I want to say it's like Bruce Lee was talking about when he said, become like water. What does water do? When it pours in a bottle, it becomes a bottle.
Yeah.
When water goes down a stream, it cuts both ways. It's just leaving that resistance behind,
Yes.
and learning how to adapt and learning how to move forward.
And sometimes, like, them people that you were, like, kicking it with, they were, in all honesty, kind of holding you back from, like, flourishing and becoming a newer and better version of yourself.
I find that, and it's so interesting because I recently read a book, and it was basically talking about probably the worst people to ever hire are friends.
Yeah.
As far as like having them do any kind of work for you. And usually that is because you're not hiring them based on how good they will be at that position.
Yeah.
You're hiring them based on a friendship,
Mm-hmm.
which will later on ruin that friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it time and time again with family where I have hired family and something happens later on. And most of the time it's because of some sort of jealousy.
Oh, yeah.
And so at some point, it's always been some sort of jealousy that's broken the situation, It's always people that, they see what we do and they work for me as an employee, and then they see the things that are happening outside of just this business model, you know, and different areas of our business are flourishing. And you can really tell, you can see and you can feel jealousy inside of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, you try to hold it back as much as possible, but at some point, you know, you're going to cross that road. And I have always felt that a lot of friendships are, in a sense, you become friends with somebody, but
I think
you're
in the
moving
beginning,
forward.
yeah, I think
If
like in the
you're-
beginning,
yeah.
like everything is cool because like you guys, they see you on this type of level and you see them on that type of level. And then when things, you know, a lot of times like with friendships, what happens is like some of this amazing things will be going on for these people, and like you're wanting the same, and then they wait.
the way honestly, I know what you're trying to say, because I have always felt that during a friendship, there's very few that people that get very uncomfortable when you have extreme growth. And if you're not with people that are growing at the same speed as you,
Yes, that's what I was going.
then they tend to get very, very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, it's such a strange thing. Like, I never really understood that, because I kick it with people that I feel that are definitely doing better than me. You know, there's people that I have on my podcast that are multimillionaires, and I try to learn from them. Like, I try to absorb as much information as possible. I don't get the jealousy aspect of it. I don't understand it. Like, I want to be around people. I had a guy in here not too long ago on one of the podcasts. It's a multi-millionaire. I mean, he owns one of the largest heating and air conditioning companies in the side of the country, the Midwest. And I try to suck up as much knowledge as possible from these people, but it's such a strange thing when you have certain types of friends that if they see you exceeding, they feel that you're leaving them behind. And I've always looked at that as,
shoot,
on a
I'm
road
the
to the
one
top,
that's like always in their corner, like rooting for them. Like, come
Yeah,
on, you can
but I mean,
do it.
in all honesty, on a road to the top, if you every day in and day out, you're working hard to get to the top of whatever it is that you're doing, basically meaning that you want to be the best at whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
You want to become bigger and better each and every day. It's going to be like an elevator, and you're going to have to let people off of certain floors.
That's
And
true.
I'm so at peace with that, because there's a certain point where I'm like, I really pick up on tiny little signals. Like, I see the jealous look in people's eyes. I see, and a lot of times they don't even understand it, because most of the time I am, I'll be honest with you. Like, most of the time I will conversate with people just to see if they're becoming this type of person, because the problem with it is, if you surround yourself with people that are jealous and that do not want you to do good, you are not going anywhere, my friend. You have to be able to distinguish who these people are, and you have to get them out of your life as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way. You don't have to tell them they suck. You don't have to tell them, because in my experience, the majority of people are like that.
Yeah.
In my experience, the majority of people tend to get jealous if somebody else is moving at a faster speed than them. I want to encourage any of y'all to fucking rethink that shit. Because if you are around somebody that's moving at a faster speed than you, figure out what they're doing, become closer friends with them, help them, and watch them help you.
Yeah.
That's the type of relationships that need to be built. Any relationship that has jealousy at all in it, is not going anywhere good for either party.
That's true.
And at that point, you have to, I consider it like letting them go back into the wild. Setting somebody free. You know what I mean?
Let them
And-
go back in the wild.
And I am very,
Set you
like I tell you
free.
guys, like,
Free, you free.
people don't even realize it. Like, I see this in just very, very subtle things. I see it in tones,
Like that
Well, I mean-
bunny rabbit that I had that
Yeah.
I absolutely wanted to like
Yeah.
love and adore and cherish, and the thing fucking hated me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fine, you're free. There you go.
hmm I mean, and there was another quote that I seen recently that I totally agree with this, that kind of gets into exactly what I'm saying here, is that 90% of what we say is with our energy.
Yeah.
The other 10%, the problem is with the other 10% that come out of people's mouth is that that's where the lies can come out. Or
Yeah.
that's where people basically say what, they want you to hear. or they want you to feel, or they want you to think.
Yeah.
But I look at way different things. I look at many different things, and a lot of it's more at an energy level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where I want to hear the voice. I hear the voice inflections. If I hear a small little crackle in somebody's voice, it makes me start thinking about it a little bit.
Oh.
And like immediately when I start getting them feelings, you know, I start thinking about it, and I start trying to understand, you know, where this is coming from.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. I mean, I have no problem letting people go.
I think Biggie said it like really well too in his one song, "The 10 Crack Commandments."
I'll never trust nobody. Your mom will set that ass up, properly gassed up. You know, I had an old guy tell me, a multimillionaire that I used to talk to back in the day.
Oh,
His name
I
was
love
Marty.
this quote. Yes, I love it. I love it.
And Marty would always say,
I love it.
I know you, you know me, but I don't know you.
Yeah.
And he was actually, he owned a toy manufacturing company. Very wealthy guy, very smart guy. And I mean, that's the big thing. You really have to always be gauging. I've been doing business long enough with enough people that I understand things very, very quickly.
I know you told me that like a long time ago, and I think that's always stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that we have this, I think everybody has like this deeper intelligence inside of them that we feel when things happen.
Yeah.
But I truly think that most people decide to ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a mistake. I think ignoring your gut feelings, ignoring the very, very small signs
We talked about this.
are a huge mistake. It's a huge
Yeah.
mistake.
Always trust your
Yep.
gut.
And I read a book, I think it's called Every Body Language. And essentially it was a body language expert who was an employee for the FBI.
Yeah.
In fact, he was the best body language expert. And some of the amazing things that I learned in that book has helped me a lot because, you know, I'll give you guys an example. We said one time they went in this lady's house, and lady let them in. So they're sitting down, kind of interviewing because her son is wanted by the FBI.
Yeah.
And one of the FBI agents asked the lady, they ask her, say, well, is your son here in the house, anywhere in this house? And she ends up rubbing the side of her neck and saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what that does is that's something that people will do in their subconscious, but on that side of their neck, there's a specific vein that goes to the heart. And
Yeah.
what she was actually attempting to do was to cut down the blood flow to her heart to actually slow the heartbeat because she was nervous. And so they waited a little while. That was like their first test.
Mm-hmm.
The second test, they asked her again, and she ended up rubbing her leg while she said, no, he's not in here.
The
And
leg, huh?
The leg, that's a self-soothing. It's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So she does this. She's rubbing her leg. So immediately they knew that he was in the
Oh,
house.
is that why you always rub my leg?
Well, no, I do that for another reason.
You're like, oh, it's going to be okay, babe.
I
Like
do
when
that.
I'm having anxiety and stuff like that. Is that why you rub my leg?
Probably that and many other reasons.
John.
I'm not going to lie. There was an ulterior motive there.
There's
But,
always
you know,
a motive with you.
it just reminds me of like when I remember that one time I walked into John's room and I asked him if he was jealous of my man muscles. I think this was like a year ago. So John was like 16 at the time and lifting a bunch, you know, and I'm like, John, are you jealous of my man muscles? And she's standing there and he ends up taking his a controller that he's playing PS3 with, sticks it over his mouth
Yeah.
and says no.
Yeah.
Which is like literally
He had a big old smile on
yeah,
his face.
which is literally if somebody ever sticks their hand over their mouth when they're telling you something, they're lying their ass off. That is like that's the primal instinct. The lie's coming out of my mouth, so I don't want you to see it, right?
Yeah, but I think like when there's a certain way that you are with Jonathan, and he gets a kick out of it.
He does, yeah.
You know, just the way you are, especially with his friends too. Like Jonathan,
His friends are all scared shitless of me.
Yeah, but Jonathan gets such a tickle out of it. Like the whole thing with like farting. Like Jonathan's got a friend named Levi.
Claims he doesn't fart
No.
or doesn't like to smell his own farts, which I think's a lie too.
Yeah. And now this kid is like, doesn't really know if he wants to come over to the house or to the shop because he thinks.
Oh, I'm gonna fart on him.
Exactly. This is why.
It's coming. It's coming. You remember the time I told John's buddies when we were on the way down to Terry's Turf Club about how I shit myself.
Oh my God.
I had that
was
long story
hilarious.
about how I shit myself.
Yeah.
I was eating crab legs at Kokomo's.
Wait, you should tell that story.
No. It was off this. There's this guy. I can't even remember his name. I'll have to share it
That was
sometime.
a baseball player,
It was a
wasn't
baseball player that tells a story about shitting himself, and it's like one of the funniest stories
on YouTube.
on planet Earth, and it's on YouTube, and it's kind of a sketchy video, but you can hear enough of it
Yeah.
to just laugh your ass off. So I told John, I was like, I'm going to tell them that story, but I'm the one.
Yeah, but
that it happened
wasn't there
to.
a guy that was on like third base or something? It was like one of the coaches that was up there, and he was telling him the story.
Everybody was trying to get away from this dude. Like
Yeah.
he's walking around telling everybody this story about how he shit himself, and all the players are like trying to
He
get
was in
away from him. And
Vegas,
he was
right?
just like following guys around and continuing to tell this story, and they were picking it up on some sort of video that they had out there.
Yeah,
And it's just absolutely hilarious. I guarantee you, if you just Google the baseball player telling the shit story,
yeah,
you will laugh. It's the most hilarious shit story I've ever heard.
it is.
And at the end, he talks about how like he had this food poisoning and he shit all over the place, and he had to put this guy's jacket around, and he had to stand behind him while he was going up the escalator, and he had this 300-pound buddy's pants on and left his shoes and all that stuff in the restroom.
He said something like
And-
he farted, and then it came out, and then was just like water.
Yeah,
It was
he's
like
and
water.
pure fucking water. And at the very end, he closes it off with, he goes, swear to God, woke up the next day, took a shit, perfect taper, or took a perfect tapered shit.
Oh my God.
So anyhow, y'all, I think we're going to bounce out of here on that note. So we'll leave you something shitty to think about.
Nah, everybody be Googling it. And
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
So anyhow, y'all, we appreciate you for coming along on this Tactical Dent Tech podcast. And as usual, we're going to see you on that next one.
And remember, it's all about the hustle. Bang, bang.
Pew, pew.